Hey guys, Banana Luck here. Welcome back to another Watch Your Realms video. Now we're back with another tier list where we'll be taking a look at what are the best units to actually go for in this upcoming banner that we have next week. So we have Guan. We have already reviewed him in a lot of extent. We tested him in Gear Rate 1, Arena, Matrix, as well as in Malrix. So if you haven't caught that video, do check out my most recent videos. You will see Guan Yu just a couple of videos ago, and you can see how good he is. Now, we know Guan Yu is quite a strong unit, but what about the rest of the units that we can pair him with? Because this is one of the rare banners that we get to pick any hero that we want that goes with them, and it's a very good chance to boost your account in terms of progression. Now, what I've done is I've compiled a list of heroes. I actually have 10 heroes in my list that you should definitely consider if you are looking to pull on this banner that will hopefully make a difference. And yeah, the list is as extensive as I could get. If I miss out any units, my apologies for that in advance. But yeah, let's get into it without further ado. And the first unit that we're gonna start off with is obviously gonna be Nezha. Now, the list is broken down in such a way where we have the units in green, which you should definitely consider. Units in yellow are a bit more debatable. It may or may not work for you depending on where you are. So I've listed them in the remarks to say where they're good at. Notable units, these are some special one-off cases for very specific accounts. If let's say you have everything else covered, and then whatever that I do not mention here, you simply shouldn't consider them because I think it's a waste of a chance to bring your account to the next level in terms of progression. Now, the first unit is gonna be Nezha, of course. Why do I say that? I can say this with quite a bit of certainty that Nezha is probably the best starter legendary unit that you can get in 2026. There's just no unit that can do it better. He can be used in every single stage 24 of the gear rates. In 124, you use him for the execute. You can pair him with Ingrid or Esoteris' team. And then he also can be used in gear rate 224 as the only DPS on the team. And then in 324, he's very helpful in taking down the boss as well as the exploding mobs that spawn with the boss. And to pair that off in terms of overall content progression, he's able to hit both air and ground units, which makes him very valuable in that aspect because we need this sort of units when you're starting out early in the game. He stuns as well in his ultimate. He also offers execution. There's just simply no other reason why I wouldn't say that his awakenings are good. There's simply no other reason why I'll say that he's not good of a base unit. Now, if we take a look at awakenings, now Nezha has some decent awakenings, but the only one that I want you to focus on, I'll say, is the A3. Now, we know that's slow on A1, but let's be honest, the Universal Ring only hits 2 targets at most, or 3, and the slow is not that reliable. What's big is actually A3, where every 4 attacks by the hero would deal extra 200% true damage. So this is very important. This is what makes him so useful in high tier Malrix content, as well as in Matrix, why he does way too much damage to the extent that he actually got removed out of that. Now, I should also say that his A5 is pretty decent. I think there are some instances where you'll use it in GVG, but for everywhere else in the game, it's probably not an awakening that you should go after. And yeah, there's really not much that I need to go about when I talk about Nezha here. Very solid unit. He also does both single target damage as well as AoE damage. You can see in the Yin Yang Blade, which is his highest damage dealing skill component, it's a chance to do single target damage up to 5 targets, or if there's only 1 target, it will do the 200% damage twice instead. And he's also paired with some of the strongest factions in the game. I honestly prefer using him on Esoteris' faction because you can just get a way better ultimate uptime. With Watchers, he is fine as well, but that just goes to show how versatile he is, having 2 factions in the list for him. Now, let's move on to the next unit, and that's going to be Eirlys. Now, Eirlys is arguably also the best healer in the game right now. Elowyn comes really close to this, but I think what makes Eirlys take the spot here is the fact that she is meta in GVG, she is also meta in Arena, which in both cases, Elowyn is not really good at the moment. And Eirlys is also one out of the 2 rage regen healers. Now, when I say rage regen here, I'm referring to the global rage regen healers, where you just have to place them down and you will get rage no matter where your units are. So that's what I'm saying when I say 1 out of 2. Now, there is also a very big component of her awakenings which makes her very, very strong, and that's the 50% damage buff at A3. And you pretty much need her in Matrix because that's where you actually need her to, you know, play out the physical wave. And also the damage reduction helps Aedrin survive. Without that, I don't think Aedrin actually makes it. So that's why I say it's required. I wouldn't say it's required to hit like the bare minimum scores, but it is required to at least hit like 70 or 80k to try to achieve that 200k high score. Now, if we go back to the game here, her awakenings, I would say that A1 is huge. So if you do not know how this works, it's that every time Eirlys heals people, she inflicts them with Serene Breath. And Serene Breath is also the skill that offers the damage reduction that Eirlys provides, as well as the 2x rage regen. So instead of getting 1% per second, you're going to get 2% per second when your allies are under Serene Breath. So what A1 does is basically extend that Serene Breath duration even though Eirlys is not healing that unit anymore. The reason being that A1 will heal again all units that are inflicted with Serene Breath. So let's say my Nerissa took some damage from a ranged damage dealer in GVG, and then afterwards you heal him up. My Eirlys starts healing the tank again instead, but because of the fact that I have A1, healing the tank will also heal Nerissa, therefore refreshing the Serene Breath. Now it's a bit complex, but just know that if you care about GVG, A1 is a huge deal. Now A3 is a lot more versatile, because you get 50% or 30% damage increase. You need this pretty much everywhere, not just in GVG, but in Arena as well. And I think in Matrix, it does help out quite a fair bit. Now, there's really not much to say about Eirlys. Everyone knows how freaking insane she is. So yeah, that's basically it. Now, let's move on to the next unit on the list, which is going to be Beelzebub. Now, Beelzebub is in a very unique position. He has one of the most unique inspiration range. We have a lot of units that have the Dolores, Diao-chan range where it's like a cone around them, but Beelzebub's range works in such a way that it's like a normal mage attack range, and everyone in, you know, that range would just basically get inspiration. And one very big thing about Beelzebub is that he has a very strong inspiration uptime once you get him to A3. What basically happens at A3 is that every time he does a heal, every time he throws out an attack, he will basically get 2% rage back, which you can see right on screen here. Now, if you're someone who really likes to focus on boss content like, for example, Matrix, Abyss, Immortal Codex, A3 Beelzebub is used very, very frequently because that's how freaking good he is. And another thing to take note of is that for non-lot units, he probably has the highest BP out of all of them. So if you care about GVG, Beelzebub is also one of the options to go after. But other than the GVG part of it, the BP part of it, I think where he's used mostly is really to push high scores for boss content. Now, A1 and A5 don't really do that much. In my opinion, A3 is the only awakening that you should go after when you think about Beelzebub. Now, the next unit that we're going to talk about here is going to be Nerissa. Now, Nerissa is basically the better version of Fersi. Fersi used to be the only AoE reduction, damage reduction healer in the game. But afterwards we got Fersi, and Fersi afterwards we got Nerissa. And Nerissa basically overtook, Fersi in terms of usability across many other parts of the game. Now, she also has an insane awakening at A5, where she basically gives 2 units inspiration instead of 1. And bear in mind that the inspiration that Nerissa gives is actually quite a hefty chunk. It is 20% inspiration, and she has a pretty high base attack at 4.6. K, and this inspiration lasts as long as Nerissa and the units are on the battlefield. And he also provides this unique interaction where you can cast Abyssal Favor on any tacticians, move them out of Nerissa's healing range, and they will still receive heals from Nerissa, even though they're out of range. Now, her awakenings, A1 and A3 is really good, if I can be honest. But it's not something that's essential. Now, why do I say it's not essential? I've pretty much cleared most of the content in game. The only thing that I'm stuck on now is Matrix 250k. But to be honest, you don't really need Nerissa anymore in Matrix. So that's that. And A1 basically increases the AoE damage reduction to be superior of Fersi's. And then A3 gives you some survivability. I think A5 is really the big awakening that we need to look out for, because you basically get 1 more inspiration when you get 1 more Abyssal Favor count. And yeah, that's why I've ranked them in such a way, because I feel that in terms of units, in terms of power spikes, Nerissa's one feels like the most extravagant, the A5. I don't think it's something that you really need to go after. I'll say that Nercha's Awakenings is probably one of the most useful one, followed by Eirlys, Beelzebub, and then Nerissa. And yeah, that's basically how I ranked it. Now, these are the units that you should definitely consider, unless you have them at all their peak awakenings already. Otherwise, you shouldn't even consider going down the list to look at these other units. Okay, so now we move into the yellow territory, and to start it off, we are going to get Elowyn. Now, Elowyn is the other rage regen healer that we have in the game. She also has a unique global heal range. What I mean by this is the Wood Elf, where you can place it on any ground tiles across the entire map. Elowyn doesn't have to be close by, but as long as you're able to, place something on the ground, the heal will come in active. And she is also a Dispel unit, very useful in Samra, as well as Wasteland Titan, essential units for both of this content. She is also required for Matrix. You can't replace her. While we replace Nerissa in the mix for Matrix, we still aren't able to replace Elowyn because she's just that good. She also offers Dispel, and most importantly, she does get Dispel at A3 onwards every time she does a heal. So if let's say I were to just pull that up on the screen in a second here, then you'll be able to see what I mean. So normally the Dispel is only on her ultimate, but then on A3, every basic attack, which is every heal she does, she has a chance to offer Dispel. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I honestly don't really know what else I can say about Elowyn. She's one of the first few units that people probably wanted earlier on in the game, but right now, I don't think she's as needed anymore because we have Eirlys as a replacement. But still, if you already have Eirlys, then Elowyn might be a consideration. If let's say your nascent list of units are too much to actually go for a gamble. And yeah, that's basically it for Elowyn. Now, if we go back to the other page here where we have Elowyn right here, you can see that I marked her in yellow. That's really the reason why. If let's say you don't have Eirlys yet, then you should probably get Eirlys instead of Elowyn, in my opinion. Just because Eirlys is the stronger unit. But we also have the consideration that if you don't have any Semra units yet, Elowyn, if you don't have any Dispeller yet, you can use Nerissa for Dispel instead in Semra. But Elowyn might be a better unit because you just kill 2 birds with 1 stone basically. And A3 is a very fancy awakening. You don't really need it anywhere. So that's why I placed it there. In my opinion, it's really a much stronger debate between base copies of each of them. But beyond that, I don't really think that you should go after Elowyn as much as possible. Now, next unit that we're going to look at here is going to be Velisse. Velisse is a very, very strong AoE mage, able to solo lanes on Malric level 4 keys at A3. I've seen this happening on other accounts, and she's extremely synergistic with Azeroth because of the rage regen that Azeroth provides every time summons expire. And why I say she's extremely synergistic, that's because Velisse is the only mage where her summons will actually fly to Azeroth and wait, to be consumed. Now, there's no other, unit in the game that actually does that. So if let's say I switch over to the Velisse description here, you can see Serpentine Spirit. When attacks are exhausted, they stop attacking and become inactive, naturally perishes after 15 seconds. If Azeroth is on the field, Serpentine Spirit will move to his position when inactive. So that basically says it all. There's no other unit in the game that has that interaction. So there's that. And then if let's say we talk about A3, Awakenings, A1 is good, but it's really more for GVG. But I'll say that A3 is where her damage potential gets unleashed. You get 2 extra attacks, which is a lot more DPS, and extra 2 attacks whenever she kills an enemy, and bear in mind, her summons are the ones that are doing most of the damage, so there's that. And yeah, that's Velisse. Now we move on to Numera. So Numera is probably very well known to be one of the best single target damage dealers, provided you already have Nestia and Vorn. And I'll say that as 1/3 of the poison trio, if she's one of the units that you're missing, then it's pretty obvious that you might want to go after her. Now, damage reduction unit, this is very important. She is the reason why the poison trio works in Abyss. Without the damage reduction, it wouldn't work anymore because your team would just take way too much damage. And she is so good as a magic DPS that she is one of the highest damage dealers in Abyss at A3. And she is also very good at the top left-hand corner of Malrix. Now, I argue that Moradin is better, but I have used Numera to quite a good extent there as well. And if let's say we're talking about any boss content where, magic damage is required, Numera normally comes out at the top of the list. You do use her in Esoteric's Stage 18 Faction Trials as well. And if let's say you don't have her yet and you already have Vorn and Nestia, this might be one of the units to go after if you want to progress in Abyss, because once you're able to get base copies of Numera, Vorn as well as Nestia, you will pretty much be able to clear Abyss Magic Shields, the first and second one, which unlocks the 60k score because you pretty much have everything covered by then. And if let's say you don't have Vorn, you could substitute Vorn for other units, but you can't really remove Numera from the mix. So that's Numera for you. And now, A3, let's have a quick look at the Awakening before we jump off to the next unit. A3 is very good because, first up, she just gets 20% magic resistance ignore from the Awakening itself. And every time she casts her ultimate, she gets 5% more each time, up to 25%, which gives you a total of 45% magic resistance ignore. And that's a huge awakening because magic resistance ignore or defense ignore is always very strong, especially in the later parts of the game. And I really enjoy A3 Numera. She is my strongest damage dealer in Abyss, above Wukong even. And yeah, There's really not much else that I need to say there to sing her praises. So yeah, that's Numera. And now we move on to the next unit on the list, and that's going to be Rosalia. Now, Rosalia is quite a recent unit. She is a very strong AoE mage. Her ultimate basically provides 25 seconds of knockback. Units won't be able to get close, and that's how I actually managed to use her to clear out the last 2 stages of Tower Deception. Very strong in Maurix, and when I say endgame content there, I was referring to Tower Deception basically. And Maurix, she's very good against modifiers where, you know, you have a lot of units coming, you are getting swarmed very easily. And if let's say you're using Valara, even Valara doesn't have that much control. Rosalia is just way better in that regard, and if you pair her with Azeroth with his World Destroyer strikes, both of them are pretty much able to clear most of the Maurix stages. Now, the problem here is that there are already a lot of strong AoE units. Like I said, there's Valara in the mix, so if you have Valara, then maybe Rosalia is not that needed in Maurix. Beyond that, there's also a lot of other mages in the mix already, so I wouldn't say that she is required, but she is very helpful. And if let's say we talk about Matrix, Rosalia is one of the highest damage dealers so far, and you can run her to great efficiency even at A0. That's how good she is. And I think for the whales, they are even complaining that A3 is dealing too much damage, but it is a very good awakening. A1 is a decent one as well. I found it to be very helpful in Tower Deception because Rosalia is one of those units where she starts off with 0 rage. As you can see here, there's no starting rage. And A1 basically gives her 100% rage every time she's spawned. And A3 is extra damage because the most of Rosalia's damage actually comes from people stepping on her painted tiles. So if let's say you have A3, you're just going to get more constant DPS from that. But it is definitely not required in any of the content where I've mentioned her, because you just place her earlier if let's say you don't have those as options there. Now, next unit is going to be Vorn. Very decent unit as well. Another 1/3 of the poison trio. Also a buff stripper. So this means that if you need someone in, for example, Samra to actually strips buff, he is the unit to go after. And he offers 2 poison stacks. Now, this is very important because when you look at the poison units after the rework, what basically happened was that every unit can only inflict their own stacks of poison, and Vorn is the only unit in the mix where he can inflict 2 different types of poison. It's the same type of poison in the sense that the damage is the same, but having that 2 stacks just allow you to go from 30 to 40 stacks instead. And then we also have to take into account that if you have Numera, she can proc, where was it? That's the skill. So she can trigger Toxic Surge, which consumes all poison stacks, and having Vorn in the mix just ensures that you have that maximum of 30 poison stacks every time Toxic Surge is triggered. So that's why I want to mention that. And the thing about Vorn is that if you take a look at the awakenings, it is nice awakenings. Shield break to 3 fighters instead. And then you also have 1 more at A3, so 4 shield break targets. And then the passive gets casted twice. But the thing about this awakenings is that you don't really need it. Vorn at A0 is enough to achieve the 60k score that you need in Abyss. And you can even replace him. I've seen people using Init instead of Vorn in that mix to still be able to deal enough damage to break the shields. So with those considerations, that's why I've put his awakenings at yellow instead, because I don't think it's that required. But if let's say you're missing just Vorn, you already have Numera and Nestia, you're struggling with using Init, then maybe Vorn is one of the considerations. But anywhere else in the game, I don't really see Vorn being used that much. Now, last unit in the mix, that's going to be Aedrin. Aedrin is a fairly new unit as well. Another one of those HP based damage dealers that no one really wants to work with because you have to have a whole entire new gear set built around him. Now, he is a mandatory unit in Spellsbane Matrix. Why is that so? Aedrin is the only unit that can tank through all of the focus strikes but still be able to deal out decent damage. And I think after switching from no Aedrin to Aedrin, my score went up for about 6 to 8,000 blood or fragments, whatever you call it in Matrix. It doesn't necessarily unlock that 200k score because I've seen people not running Aedrin and also unlocking 200k score, but you do need crazy magic awakenings instead. So I'll say that Aedrin is mandatory for easier time in Matrix, but anywhere else in the game, you're not really gonna see Aedrin in the mix because it's just not used in any of those content. So yeah, A5 is a very nice awakening on him. If let's say we'll just take a quick look at that. Every other awakening is not really that needed on Aedrin, but A5 basically gives him 15% penetration to all shielded allies within 2 tiles around him. So that's a big awakening. But where do you use it? It's honestly just Matrix. That's why it's marked in maybe, not marked in yes. It is a strong awakening, yes, but not something that you really want to go after. Now, we've come to the end of the 10 heroes that I wanted to feature, which I feel in this day and age are really important in some parts of the game. We still have some units here. Now, with Silas Vienna for Vorn, this has always been a recommendation of mine. If let's say you're missing one of those units, maybe you need the bond, then perhaps you might want to consider them, but I have to say that with all the new pierces that we've been getting lately, it looks like Silas is not even that mandatory anymore in Gear Rate 324. And Lord Finis, very useful unit in Infernal Trials. Abyss maybe, but beyond that, you don't really see him being run anywhere. So should you pick Lord Finis just to clear out that 3 Ancients from Infernal Trial Stage 18? In my opinion, no. But maybe for someone that already has all the 10 units above there at the right awakenings, you might want to consider that. Eirlys, Gear Dungeon 113, makes quick work of that on the top lane, but you can now use Rosalia for that. So yeah, once again, I'm making reasons why you don't need to go after these units to basically tell you maybe you consider them, but most probably you don't have to. We also have Draylin, a very strong healer, damage reduction healer like Eirlys. At A1 also gives a damage boost, but do you need her? Probably not, because I've completed most areas of the game and I haven't found an area where you absolutely need Draylin for any team compositions to work. And all these units, they are good at their base awakening, so maybe consider Nascent Banner for them instead of picking them during this banner unless you absolutely have to. Now, everything else in the game that I've not mentioned here, you can pretty much just not think of them because I don't think those units are worth it to be included in this list. Now, maybe I missed a very good unit in this list and I do apologize, but I've skimmed through the hero gallery tons of times and I still really can't think of any unit that I need to fit in here. So that's the list, and before I end off the video, I just want you to ask yourself, what do you want to focus next in terms of game progression? That will probably help you narrow down in this list. If let's say you want to focus on all the stage 24s of gear rates, Nerissa is going to be a very solid unit to go after. Velisse as well, if let's say you want to focus on gear rate 124, so does Rosalia. But if let's say you want to focus on Abyss, then Numera, Vorn, Nerissa does come into play instead. And then let's say you want to focus on Matrix, then you have Aedrin, Rosalia, Beelzebub, Eirlys, and yeah, that's basically it because you don't use Nerissa anymore. And yeah, the second question is then, are you able to grab any of these base copies that you're missing? Now, if we're talking about awakenings, you can ignore this question. But if let's say you're considering between getting awakenings versus getting base copy of these units, take a look at your nascent list. Maybe it's worthwhile to pick that unit off a nascent banner instead of picking them from this pick your own banner, because at the end of the day, there is Guan Yu pet in this banner, so you're not guaranteed 100% to actually get the pet unit. You may get Guan Yu instead, but Nezha does guarantee a new unit, which might be better odds in the long run. And last but not least, ask yourself, are there alternatives to the heroes that you are looking for here? If let's say there are some units that you can use instead of, picking them from the list, maybe try that instead, because pick your own banners are very rare, and this is one of the rare times that you can actually make very good progression instead of wasting that chance. So that's pretty much it for the video. Very long one, but I hope it helps you. That's my top 10 list of the units that you should consider next week. Now, if you still have any questions, leave it down in the comment section below. We're more than happy to answer them. Let me know what your situation is. What heroes are you considering? And maybe from there I can give you some tips or my opinion on what should be the best units to look out for. Now, that's gonna be it for the video. Thanks for tuning in. It's been a long one. If you enjoyed it, leave a like or subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.